If you'll indulge me for a moment, I want to have a conversation about the power of perspective, how we view life, the events that occur within it, and our response to them. Before we tackle the idea of answering those trio of questions, I want you to consider some facts and figures. According to my friends over at the Boston Consulting Group, they found 48% of workers from 8 countries admit that they've experienced burnout both at home and at work. Meanwhile, according to the World Health Organization, women are more likely to have depression than men. It's estimated 3.8% of the population experience depression, including 5% of adults, 4% among men, and 6% among women, and 5.7% of all adults over 60. It's estimated that nearly 280 million people across the world have experienced some form of depression throughout the course of their lives. For my friend, Kareen Aristide, she's a human behavior expert and mental health specialist. She describes herself as a passionate force who's committed to helping people unlock their true and full potential, both personally, professionally, and spiritually. Her illustrious career has spanned more than 25 years as a speaker, pastor, trainer, consultant, and coach. And for good measure, she's even had a hand in becoming a successful author as well. She's dedicated to both personal and professional growth and development, focusing on helping individuals of all ages to be educated on the intricate balance between the connection between personality and mental well-being. And she joined me this week to have a discussion about human behavior, mental health, and how it's all interconnected. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. Kareen, if you're ready, I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program. And I'm super excited to talk about your work in mental health and human behavior, my friend. Great to see you this afternoon, and thank you for a few minutes.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Now, Kareen, I know that you work to help people through the intricacies of both mental health, human behavior, and provide them spiritual insight, my friend. So I'm wondering if you can tell me about your work and what makes you so fabulous.
Yeah, I mean, humans are very complex, right? And so sometimes we give ourselves a disservice by not appreciating the fact that we are made in three parts: body, soul, and spirit. And each of these parts deserve attention, deserve to be honored. And so that is how I approach my work. I always honor people in all of their intricacies, body, soul, and spirit. And I help them do the same for themselves because I think it's a tragedy when someone can see something great in you and even help you pull it out. But if you don't have that capacity yourself, it just breaks my heart, And so having been myself in a on a journey to really come to know myself, love and appreciate myself, with all my quirks and warts and all, but understanding that I have value and that what I bring, no one else can bring. And the faster I can embrace that, then the more healing I can acquire.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that you've spent over 25 years with your experience as a pastor, speaker, trainer, and consultant, and an author as well. So I'm curious to also ask you about how you've approached really transforming people, because I know you believe that it's an honor to have the ability to touch people, to open their mind, and to have an uplifting spirit. So tell me about the defining work of your career and what brings you the most joy in the work that you do.
Love that. Wow, the defining work. I like that. I think, for me it's just lived experience, having been um rock bottom, many times in different aspects of my life. I know what it's like to be able to have someone come alongside and journey with you. Because sometimes you can't get out of the pressure and the pain and whatever it is that you're going through, because it's part of your progress. It's part of your process in order to become that next best version of yourself. And so my role really is kind of like a midwife. I come along, you got the baby in yourself. I know you're a man, so you don't understand the whole concept of birthing in a way. I mean, in a way, yes, but, maybe figuratively, but, having been a mom and having birthed 5 children, it is sometimes you wonder why you do it again and again, because it hurts like hell. And so, but then when the baby comes out, it's like you forget all this excruciating pain that you went through because of this beautiful being that you have in your hands, And I think that's the same thing for anything, that we have to go through. There's a saying or a concept called post traumatic growth. And so I feel like the greatest joy in my work is to walk people through so that they can get to that post uh, traumatic growth and just become that next best version of themselves through that transformative experience of pain, which we don't want to have pain. We don't like pain, but it is just part of the journey.
Yeah, and I know that you've got your own personal experiences with things such as burnout, resilience, and depression, my friend. So, what are your thoughts on the concept of resilience, and how do you help people sort of overcome the feeling of burnout and depression to live the best version of their own lives, my friend? What are your thoughts there?
Yes, I love this topic. One of my utmost favorite people in the world in this conversation is Brene Brown. Like, she has spent her life work, just talking about vulnerability and resilience and things like that. And I think that it's really a miracle, to come out on the other side of something so um, debilitating as depression, burnout, all of those things that basically suck the life out of you many times. And to come out on the other side stronger and better is definitely a miracle in itself, and I've seen time and time again that it's possible, and being able to be having lived experience and also helping others through these experiences has made me a true believer in the resilience and and uh, and I think that there's anybody can learn, how to be more resilient. And I think that you're such a beautiful example of resilience in that you have come out there and decided to build this work through this podcast, which what, like, you didn't have to, right? And most of the time, this is not paid work, but at the same time, it's amazing. And I'm sure you'll agree, the wealth, that you've acquired just by pushing through and deciding to be you are called to be in the world, regardless of anything that could hold you back. So I applaud you for that.
Well, I appreciate that, and there's power in the idea of creating your own vision. Kareen, I
Yeah.
I always say that you can't rise to the level of expectations of somebody else if you don't set them for yourself, right?
Did love that. That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm curious to get your perspective on how we can all learn, grow, and sort of prosper in the face of prosperity if we adopt or embrace the idea of diverse perspectives. Because, one of the greatest lessons we can learn in life is the ability to listen to others. Would you
Yes.
agree with that?
Oh, big time, 1000%. I think, it's the best way to grow, to listen to somebody who disagrees with you or who has a different perspective. And I think more people would grow if they would learn to be more emotionally intelligent in a way that they're able to retain their own point of view or their own strong opinions without getting irritated or upset, if someone disagrees with them, even if it's vehemently, to keep their composure and just listen, listen to the arguments, listen to, what it is that they're trying to say. The problem, I think, a lot of the times is that most people, when they disagree, they usually attack instead of being coming from a place of teaching, right? And so if you have a certain opinion on something that's controversial, for example, for example, I have a bit of controversial opinions when it comes to vaccines, for example. And so every time I engage in a conversation about vaccines, I always preface by saying, now, this is controversial. I know you will not agree, just to kind of put the person at ease in that I, I respect your perspective and here is mine, right? Yeah. So I think, especially when it comes to topics that are more um, sensitive, it's really important to be open minded and, yeah, to listen before you speak, listen more, and then talk, when necessary, I would say.
Oh, well, that's more difficult for some than others, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
And Corinne, I wanted to ask you about the idea of emotional sort of vulnerability and the power that comes from emotional vulnerability. Because I think it can be a competitive advantage. Would you agree with that?
Wow, I'm still processing that, because lately, more and more, I've been on a journey to be more and more vulnerable. And I find myself sometimes speaking about certain things and start crying. And I'm like, I don't want to cry, you know? But at the same time, there's beauty in tapping into that vulnerable space and sharing it with others so that people can, especially when you're a public speaker or when you have a position of prominence. So, for example, I'm a pastor, and so last Sunday, I had to preach a sermon. And before I preached, I started to cry because I shared with the congregation how it was the first um, church where I felt I could completely be myself, be me. Like I was completely accepted, crazy girl and all. And it was really emotional for me. So I started to cry before I went into my sermon. So but it was very liberating, and one person came to me after and said, you know what, I saw that, you've hit that place of freedom. You felt so free up there, today. And I was like, yeah. So I think that's definitely that, just daring and having the courage to be disliked. And that's a big thing for me. I think what has kind of stopped me in the past from being more vulnerable is that aspect of I want everybody to like me. I don't want to irk anybody. I don't want to rub nobody the wrong way, that kind of thing. And so letting that go has been huge. There's a book actually that I read this year that totally revolutionized my year in that aspect. And it's called, The Courage to Be Disliked. I recommend this book. It's so good. So, anyways, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that you're someone who strongly believes that we have to show up as our authentic selves, using our vision and sort of our own passion to discover sort of the massive steps that we need to take to transform our lives. So I'm curious to ask you about authenticity and how it's related to our vision and personal passion. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I love this topic too. Yeah, I think when it comes to being authentic, one of the most important things is to, as I was saying in the beginning, just loving yourself, coming to a place where you love yourself and you choose yourself and you're able to show up in the world in a way that is true to what's inside, so you're living from the inside out. That's my definition of authenticity. Sometimes I talk a lot about in my work about plagiarism. A lot of people, they grow up, and sometimes their parents kind of impose things. Sometimes it's not imposed overtly, sometimes it's imposed, like in a very subtle way, but it impacts the child, and the child grows up and becomes an adult living the life that has been imposed on them, or that has been basically uh, chosen for them. And that's really like plagiarizing, right? So I always talk about, you know, taking a pause and making sure that whatever you're doing, it really reflects your being. So that's really what my work is all about, is about helping people be before they do. Because when you choose yourself and you become who you are truly are, then your actions will flow from your being, and not just to do, or doing to be accepted, or doing to, prove something to the world, that you don't believe about yourself, right? And so, yeah, I think, there's no distinction between loving yourself and authenticity. You can't have one without the other, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kareen, tell me, I'm a big believer in sort of talent in life is equally distributed, but sometimes, the access to opportunity isn't. And I know that you believe in the concept of equitable fairness and how you might think that it's a pillar to our own personal development journey. I'm wondering your thoughts there as well.
Yeah, that's another pretty, I would say, controversial or touchy subject for sure, because everybody has their lived experience, and for example, there are some areas in the world where the color of your skin is really a detriment. There's obstacle right off the bat. Once you start living out there, and I think that whenever you're a minority, and you're hit, with that, then it's a question of how are you going to access your uniqueness and how are you going to define yourself, right? I think defining yourself for yourself makes all the difference in the world, um, that's just my experience. And I always, as my kids were growing up, I always, spoke to them about their identity. And, the first identity, that I taught them about is them being a child of God, and so they live life from this lens. And when you do that, whatever is of the outside does not necessarily dominate. So let me explain in the sense that I really believe that, as I said, we're made in three parts: body, soul, and spirit. And if you live your life from the inside out, so spirit first, and then mind and then body, what happens is you kind of command the atmosphere. That's the way I think. And so, for example, one person who's living from the outside in will meet the very same person and have a very different reaction or experience with that person than myself, for example. And this has happened throughout life so many different times. My children have experienced that as well. And so you have the ability, when you live from the inside out, to command how, you react and interact with people. And so there's things that you're not going to experience. So that's just my lived experience and my truth, right? In that, I think the world is too outside in and too focused on what is seen with the eyes, which perpetrates, all inequities that you can think about, right? So
Mhm.
that's just how I see it.
Yeah, and to that point, just building on that point, Kareen, I'm also curious to ask you, how do you think we can heal the societal divisions that exist today? What do you think is the key there? How do you think we can create what I call more bridges of unity? What are your thoughts there?
Love that. Bridges of unity. That's awesome. I think, yeah, it's really to choose to live from the inside out, remove labels, because I'm not really black, I'm brown. And, this whole concept of colorism is really, and it's a social construct. That's really what it is. And so any social construct can be debunked or can be put aside for a higher order concept, right? And so once you remove all of this, you choose to live from the inside out and you choose to love, no matter what, even your enemies, miracles happen. I really believe that. And so there's something about the human experience that can bring out that love, or that desire to help and to be like a lot of times when there's tragedies in the world, earthquakes, uh, anything, tornadoes, hurricanes,
Hmm.
people don't think about their skin color or whatever. They will come together and help each other. It's just some people get, superhuman strength, to help the other that is suffering. And so I think if we all tap into that, we will see major changes in our world.
Yeah, and Corinne, I'm also fascinated to get your thoughts on the idea of humanity, or the idea of people sort of defining their own moments of difference in life. Because, I firmly believe that life, when we're born, we're all given a deck of playing cards, and it's coming upon all of us to sort of shuffle it in the direction that we want to go. Because, I always say, I look at life as etching your fingerprints in the sand. And I call it etching your fingerprints in the sand of difference. And I'll use myself quickly as
Yeah.
an as an example. So Kareen, was born with cerebral palsy, and I found out at the age of 9 that I wouldn't be able to walk without assistance for the duration of my life. But I always one of the mottos that I live my life by that is that everyone's portrait of success is different, and
Yeah.
why my version of success may not be conventional, as long as it's effective for me, then I'm making a difference. So, how important do you think it is that people discover their own defining moment of difference? What are your thoughts there?
It is so, 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 so important. And wow, thank you so much for sharing your story. I think you're phenomenal. You're one of my new heroes. It's just, I mean, I like it brings hope. Yeah, I think when people choose to go beyond whatever maybe deck of cards that they may not like or that they don't think they deserve or whatever it is that comes, right? It's that idea that what, I am more than what I'm going through, you know um and if I look at it in the right way, if I have the right perspective, then it's actually a blessing. You can turn any mishap into a blessing, just like you did, and be an extraordinary and impactful um, addition, to this world, and we're all born for a purpose. And so I think we cannot allow ourselves to let life define us. We have to choose to define our life. So, love that.
Yeah, and I was just about to ask you, how do you think we can shift the narrative when
Mm,
adversity strikes? Because, I always tell people adversity is going to strike all of us, and none of us
yeah,
are immune from adversity.
right.
And I'd say the answer to the test of adversity is when, uh, resilience is the answer to the test of adversity. So, how do you think we can shift our mindsets once adversity strikes in our
Yeah.
life? Because it'll happen to all of us, right?
Exactly, absolutely. And I think, one of the things that prevent us from seeing a tragedy or a crisis as a blessing is this aspect of being so centered on us, right? And so I think one of the ways to win at this resilience game is to understand that we are all connected. There's the power in understanding that, I'm not going through this. for myself only. It's for others as well. It's to bring hope and healing to others. This is what, I came to that realization, you know, um, the first time that I basically, lost all like ability. I was basically living in such distress that, I lost all control and I couldn't do anything. And, just of accepting the process and not focusing on the results, but knowing that, what, this is not just for me that I'm going through this, it's really to be a blessing to someone else. That's really what it is. And I think that it brings that aspect of humility and purpose to be a blessing for other people. And more, I find that as the people that I'm helping and working with, more and more I'm seeing that um, people are more in tune with that. I don't know if it's the globalization of the internet, where you can have somebody in Africa or in China or wherever else that's going through the exact same thing as you, and they came out of it sharing and just thriving out of it, and it just brings hope, right? And so I think that there's definitely um, I think there's as much as there's a lot of bad things and evil happening in the world, but I think that the good is also growing and rising as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kareen, tell me, I'm curious to get your perspective on if someone is truly committed to their own personal growth or development journey. What are three promises you think that any individual can make to themselves that can aid them in their commitment to their personal development journey? What are your thoughts then?
So three commitments, is that what you said?
Three commitments or promises that people can make to themselves. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Well, my one of my favorites is choose yourself. you know, gotta put your oxygen mask on if you're on a plane first before you can help somebody. So definitely choose yourself. The other thing is pause. So don't spend too many days without spending time in being in touch with you, with your feelings, your emotions, with what's going on the inside. So I recommend to, 24 hours at least if you can, to get out of your environment and just, be with yourself, and then be with God. No one else around. So that's a really important step in committing to your personal development. And then the third one is release the results, just engage in the process. Say yes to the process, no matter how painful it is, because when you have that courage to move forward and to get out of your comfort zone, you are going to see miracles. So yeah, those will be my three.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kurt, I've got two questions left for you. And the first is, I'm curious, how do you think, as a society and individually, we can create or define sort of personal or professional clarity? What are your thoughts there?
hmm So yeah, I think one of the things that's important is to make sure that you don't work for money. So let me explain. Um, I really believe that because you spend, you know, almost your whole entire life working, right? A lot of people do, 9 to 5, 40 hours a week. When you're an entrepreneur, you probably do double that. And so you want to make sure you're doing something you love, because if you don't, you're basically killing yourself softly. Okay. So you have to have, and if definitely, it's not something that is possible at the moment to do what you love and love what you do, then have a passion project. Have something that's going to get out of the right race and really get that joy out, you know, because that is really who you are. One of the things I say sometimes is, we should change this question about what do you do for a living? You know what I mean? Like, that doesn't define me, you know? I can do something and it doesn't necessarily mean that, it's really who I am or what I'm passionate about. So I think we should change this question, after, what's your name? Then it would be, what are you passionate about? When you meet a stranger, instead of asking for their profession, ask them for their passion, and you'll know much more about them that way.
Yeah, and, I wanted to end our conversation by asking you about what brings you the most personal joy in life, and when you look at your life and your legacy, how do you want that to be defined?
That's so good. Well, I'm a believer, so I have to say that what brings me the most joy is definitely my relationship with God. Always in the unseen is where my joy is, because circumstances, they are up and down, they come and go, so they cannot bring true joy, right? And so happiness is fleeting, but joy is really everlasting. So having this relationship with my Father in heaven is really what brings me the most joy. And it's that joy that I'm able to then share with my family, my friends, my clients, and the stranger that is not yet a friend that I'm just discovering, like you.
Yeah, and to that point, I'm curious. Just one follow up. I'm curious. How do you define your personal why or your personal internal motivation? Because I'm a huge believer that internal motivation is a driver to everlasting success. Because if we're not invested in our own process, it's hard
Hmm.
to be invested in somebody else. So I'm curious, what's your personal why? Why do you get up in the morning and do the work that you do?
It's love, to be very honest. you know, my prescription is always, whatever you do, it has to be motivated by love. If it's motivated by something else, then don't do it. So that's really what it is.
Yeah,
Period.
yeah, absolutely. Kareen, finally, tell me if people want to get connected with you, what's the best way they can do that?
Yeah, so I'm all over. So you can just Google Kareen Aristide. You'll find me everywhere. But I do have a sleek bio, which has everything in there, my socials and all different free gifts, all of that. So sleek, SLEEK .bio, bio / my name, Kareen Aristide.
Well, fabulous. Well, I have to tell you, I am certainly more enlightened for having this conversation. I want to thank you for the light that you bring to the world and to
Oh,
the clients you work with, and for your efforts as a pastor as well. And I want to thank you for inspiring others to reach their own version of prosperity and for engaging with me in conversation this afternoon. It's most appreciated.
Oh, thank you so much, Kevin. It was definitely an honor to be a part of what you do. And I'm hoping we can stay connected and do something together when I have my own podcast.
Absolutely. I'd love to return the favor. I'm an equal opportunity podcaster, I promise. Okay?
That's great. Thank you so much again for having me.